Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, before I start with today's class, I would like to go ahead and first of all discuss how to go ahead and approach microeconomics as a whole. Just give me 5 minutes to discuss this, then I will start. So, by the end of this week, okay, that means by Sunday, you will find that almost all of microeconomics will be visible on your portal. There will be things which would be in the recorded format, and there will be things which will be in the format of the live classes that we have taken. But more or less, I have gone ahead and I have compared with the syllabus, and whatever topic is mentioned in the syllabus, I think I will be able to cover all of those by this Friday, right? So what you need to go ahead and do on this weekend is that you need to go ahead and you need to look up at your syllabus and you need to start mapping these topics yourself also, right? And if you find that, ma'am, there is this topic that I don't find in the live classes or recorded classes, I don't find this topic anywhere, but I think that this is missing. You will come back to me and you will inform me so that I can go ahead and I can tell you where that topic is or if that topic is actually missing or not. That's the first thing. Now, secondly, because we have covered microeconomics, I want to also go ahead and I want to do some mock tests. But I will give you enough time to go ahead and to read microeconomics in detail before we go towards starting with the mock tests of microeconomics, right? So I will be going ahead and I will be doing a mock test of microeconomics. And for that, the date is going to be 10th of August, right? So it is 24th July today, and you will have enough days for preparing microeconomics as a whole, right? But I want you to go ahead and I want you to study the entire microeconomics, revise it by 10th of August, do everything in microeconomics. So for example, when I talk about Indian Economic Service, this is GE1 paper, right? GE1 paper has two parts to it. One is microeconomics, another is maths plus stats plus econometrics, right? So once you finish microeconomics, you will notice that you have covered at least 70% of GE1, right? Similarly, when I talk about DEPR exam also, you will notice that in DEPR, both in phase 1 and phase 2, you have a chunk of microeconomics, right? Similarly, when we talk about IAS Economics Optional also, you will realize that a major part in paper one part of this is microeconomics, right? So once we do a subject, it means that you should be thorough with that subject from all aspects, how to write the answer, how to approach to a question and everything, right? So I want you to go ahead and I want you to, yes, you can take a week's time, that's fine. Does not, I mean, I'm okay with it. What I will be doing for this mock test, because this is just a subject mock test. So I will be going ahead and I will also be giving you solutions to it. In what sense will I be giving solutions? In the sense of the standard solution, right? So you can go ahead and compare your answers to those standard solutions also, right? So it's okay. You can take a week's time because I understand that you need to have your university studies are also going on. So that's fine. Don't worry. Okay. So this is what is the plan for microeconomics. Now, within this microeconomics, you would have noticed that there are a lot of new things happening. So, for example, if you compare it with your master's exam preparation that we had done with you, you will notice that as compared to that, there are many new things that have been added, like theory of distribution, theory of profit, theory of rent, and many new things that we talked about, right? So what you need to ensure is that what topics you already know, right? You need to focus on those topics, but try to go ahead and focus on those topics also, which you are studying for the first time and you may not have studied as part of your master's preparation or in your MA economics entrance exam preparation or in your college, right? So try to go ahead and focus more on those topics and revise those topics so that you are able to do a justice to the upcoming mock paper, right? Okay. So now today I want to go ahead and I want to talk about a very important topic from general equilibrium. Right? And we are going to go ahead and we are going to talk about one, what is Pareto efficiency? We will be linking this Pareto efficiency to something which is known as Pareto criteria. We will go ahead and we will see what are the issues with this Pareto criteria and how these issues were resolved using something which is known as Hicks Kaldor criteria. Right? So we will be talking about how to go ahead and how to talk about the Hicks Kaldor criteria and how it solved the problem of Pareto criteria. Then there were some issues with Hicks Kaldor criteria also. इसमें भी कुछ problems थी. And we want to go ahead and we want to talk about something which is known as Skitovisky criteria. Right? And finally, there were problems with this Skitovisky criteria also. So I will be talking about those problems also, right? So what we should go ahead and we should start with first of all is the Pareto criteria. So acha, before I go to Pareto, let me give you a history. So we had an individual by the name of Pigou. And what Pigou did is that Pigou started talking about the theory in terms of A, cardinal utility, B, interpersonal utility. Okay. So what Pigou went ahead and said is that one, you have cardinal utility. Cardinal utility means what? As we know, any utility which can be measured in numbers, that is called as cardinal utility. And the second thing that he talked about, that Pigou talked about, is interpersonal utility. So he said, I can go ahead and I can compare utility between two individuals. So for example, if this individual tells me that he gets a utility of 10 utils, and this individual tells me he gets a utility of 12 utils, I can compare the utility between these individuals. है ना, कोई भी दो लोगों के बीच में, इंटरपर्सनल, बिटवीन पीपल, कोई भी दो लोगों के बीच में हम यूटिलिटी को कंपेयर कर सकते हैं। एंड यूटिलिटी इज अ कार्डिनल कॉन्सेप्ट। यूटिलिटी को हम नंबर्स में मेजर करते हैं, वी मेजर यूटिलिटी इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर्स। देन व्हाट हैपेंड, देन केम पिगो, राइट? एंड पिगो सेड नो, utility is not a cardinal concept. It will be wrong to say that utility is a cardinal concept, and rather utility is an ordinal concept, right? And what is ordinal concept means? That means that it is based on ranking. Sorry, I've written Pigo, Pareto. So Pareto said that utility is an ordinal concept. Mane, I can make indifference curves. I can check the ranking, but I cannot go ahead and I cannot just say कि इतना utility या इतना utility. I cannot give numbers. Number नहीं दे सकते हैं कि 10 util, 12 util, 20 util, नहीं, वो possible नहीं होगा. I can make indifference curves. And the second thing that he said is, because I am making indifference curve, I can only tell about intra-personal utility. Intrapersonal means what, beta? Intra means self. I can compare my utility with myself. मैं ये तो बता सकती हूँ that higher the indifference curve, more the utility. जितना ऊपर IC में जाते जाओगे, utility will increase. But I cannot say कि how much is my utility as compared to your utility. That comparison cannot be done. मैं वो comparison नहीं कर सकती हूँ. I cannot compare points. Right? So what Pareto went ahead and did, and how we started with, is first we started working with what is called as an Edgeworth box. Right? An Edgeworth box was what? It is basically going ahead and making a box that shows all possible combinations of two goods that can be consumed or that are available to two consumers based on their endowment bundle. So endowment bundle मतलब the bundle that the individuals enter the market with, उसके basis पे what are the possibilities available to the consumer, जब हम वो निकालते हैं, that is called as a Pareto efficient, I mean that is called as an Edgeworth box. उसी को हमने एक Edgeworth box का नाम दे दिया. So now what started happening is that, so for example, let's say that there is individual 1, right? And this individual 1 has 4 units of good X and 5 units of good Y, right? And then there is this individual 2. Individual 2 has 2 units of good X and 1 unit of good Y. And we are given the endowments of different individual कि ये वो points हैं जिसके साथ they are entering the market with, right? So now what we can go ahead and we can do is we can start saying what is the total endowment available to these individuals. इनको कितना कितना endowment available है, we can start writing that down. So if I talk about total endowment of good X, that is going to be 6 units, and of good Y, 6 units. When we go ahead and we plot this, This was giving rise to an Edgeworth box. So you individual A, individual B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, another way of going ahead and looking at this is the following. Let us go ahead and make an indifference curve and budget line of individual A. ये individual A है, ये इसका budget line है, ये इसका indifference curve है. And this is point of equilibrium for individual A. Similarly, I can make one for individual B. There will be a budget line, there will be an indifference curve, and this will be the point of equilibrium for individual B. What we can go ahead and we can do is, we can take the the combinations of individual B and we can just go ahead and we can start rotating them. तो इसको अगर हम एक बारी rotate कर दें और फिर हम दोबारा rotate कर दें, and if I just bring this together, what I will get will be called as an Edgeworth box. So an Edgeworth box has origin of individual A here. Here his consumption of X is increasing. Here his consumption of good Y is increasing. And this is the origin of individual B. Here his consumption of X is increasing and here his consumption of Y is increasing. When we go ahead and when we make something like this, keeping into mind that these axes must give the sum as the endowment, total endowment, तो उसी को हम एक Edgeworth box बोल देते हैं. We call that as an Edgeworth box, right? So I have gone ahead and I have prepared this Edgeworth box like this, right? Now, what is the endowment bundle of individual 1? His endowment bundle is 4x and 5y. So we start from here. 1, 2, 3, 4x. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5y. And we start marking this bundle, right? What we will also do is we will start highlighting the bundle for individual B. So B के लिए, because this is the origin, this will turn out to be 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? Similarly, this will turn out to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is increasing the amount of X for B and Y for B. है ना? And if I just go ahead and I just take, so how many, what B has? 2 units of X and 1 unit of Y. तो अगर मैं इसको include कर दूं, इसी point पे I will come up. Right? So what we notice is that you will get exactly the same point. You should get exactly the same point as the endowment bundle. ये हमारा endowment bundle हो गया. Then what we can go ahead and do is we can define Pareto efficiency condition. So Pareto efficiency condition basically goes ahead and it says that any point will be Pareto efficient if to increase utility of one individual, you must decrease utility of another individual. Only if I do this, एक का यूटिलिटी बढ़ाने के लिए अगर दूसरे का कम करना पड़े, to increase the utility of one individual, it is possible only by decreasing the utility of another individual. Then it will be called as a Pareto efficient point. Right? So what we can go ahead and do? If I take an Edgeworth box, I take origin of A, origin of B, and I take an indifference curve of individual A here, right? And I take an indifference curve of individual B here, right? And I ask, is point G, is G Pareto efficient? The answer is no. It is not Pareto efficient. Why? Because I can go from a point like G to a point where utility of both individuals can increase. And how do I increase the utility of both individuals? I increase the utility of both individuals by moving them to higher indifference curve. So when I move individuals to higher indifference curve, we are able to increase the utility of these individuals, right? Now, if I just go ahead and I look in this diagram, individual A can move on a higher indifference curve from point G, and individual B can also move on a higher indifference curve as compared to point G. So how does individual B move on higher indifference curve? By going away and away from his origin. The more away you are from your origin, the more higher indifference curve you are on. जितना दूर अपने origin से होगे, उतना ज़्यादा utility होगा. And same here, the more away you are from your indifferent origin, the higher your utility is, right? So now if I go ahead and if I just go ahead and if I just match this together, what happens? A point like E makes individual on higher indifference curve for both of them, right? So if it increases the utility for both the individuals, we can go ahead and we can say that E is Pareto improvement point. E is Pareto improvement point. Is it making sense? So when I move from G to point E, I am able to increase the utility of all individuals, both the individuals. So E is improvement over G, right? Or I can also go ahead and say that E is superior point over G, right? Or G is inferior point. Now, as a fact, as long as you see a lens being created between the indifference curves, there is always scope for improvement. You can always increase the utility of both the individuals. हमेशा एक scope रहेगा कि utility दोनों individuals का improve हो रहा है, right? Now, what we can go ahead and we can see is that once this lens is completely eliminated, right? So for example, if we go ahead and we go to a point like this, right? We go to a point like F. Now what has happened? The entire lens has been eliminated, right? And if I talk about point F, right? At point F, both individuals are on highest IC possible. Both individuals are on highest IC possible, right? So what we have seen is that now we are on the highest indifference curve for both individuals. We are now making them to the best possible point. We are bringing them to the best possible point. Up, can I go ahead and if I move from point F, can I increase the utility of both the individuals? I cannot. To increase the utility of one individual, we have to decrease the utility of the other individual. देखो कैसे? Now, if I have to move away from point F, so let's say that suppose I move from point F to point H. What happens? I am going further away from origin for individual A, right? If we are going further away from origin for individual A, utility of individual A is increasing. And we are going towards the origin of individual B when I go from F to H. So utility of individual B is decreasing. So when I go from point F to any point, what do I notice? I notice that utility of one individual increases and utility of other individual decreases, right? So we can say that F is basically a Pareto efficient point. F is basically a Pareto efficient point, right? Now just try to understand one more thing here. Suppose we go ahead and we join all Pareto efficient points. I know this is something all of us know, but I want to add on these topics today. So when I join all Pareto efficient points, what we get is called as contract curve, right? So a curve which is locus of all Pareto efficient points is called contract curve. यहां तक का concept you know, इतना हमने पढ़ा हुआ है. Today I want to start building up on this concept again. So what I want to go ahead and I want to do today is I want to talk about the Pareto criteria and what Pareto has suggested. See, what is the limitation or issue with this Pareto criteria is that when I go from point A to point B, I know A is Pareto efficient point. Right? It is being met where there is tangency of my indifference curves. The ICs are tangent to each other. Tangency of indifference curve से क्या मतलब है? Because they are tangent to each other, because my indifference curves are tangent to each other, there is no further possibility of improvement. It's no more possible to increase the utility of both the individuals. दोनों individuals का utility, I cannot go ahead and I cannot increase the utility of both of them. अगर मैं ए से किसी भी पॉइंट पे जाऊंगी, टू इंक्रीज द यूटिलिटी ऑफ वन इंडिविजुअल, आई मस्ट डिक्रीज द यूटिलिटी ऑफ अदर. दैट इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. देयर इज नो फर्दर इम्प्रूव चांस ऑफ इम्प्रूविंग बोथ, है ना. सो दैट इज अचीव्ड एट द टेंजेंसी कंडीशन. नाउ let us try to understand that what is the issue with this Pareto criteria, why we want to talk about Hicks Kaldor criteria. So basically, point A we understand is Pareto efficient. Point B is also Pareto efficient. This is okay. Both the points are Pareto efficient points. When I go from point A to point B, utility of individual A is increasing because I am moving to a higher indifference curve for individual A. So ये indifference curve A का था और अब हम एक higher indifference curve पे चले गए IC A dash. So utility of individual A is increasing. Good enough. When I go from A to B, what do I see? I see that I am going towards the origin of individual B. So here he is on a higher indifference curve and here he is on a lower indifference curve, right? So when I go from A to B, I am going towards the origin of B and we can say that utility of individual B is decreasing, right? Now, if someone asks you an important question, that can you tell me, is point A better or point B better? Which point is more better? Is point A better or point B better? क्या आप बता पाओगे? Will you be able to compare those? The answer is no. I can do intrapersonal comparison. I can say कि हाँ, अगर A का utility A से compare करो, if you compare utility of A with A, utility of A has increased. If you compare utility of B with B, utility of B has decreased. So I can go ahead and I can compare utility of A with A and B with B. But I cannot compare points on the contract curve. I cannot compare whether point A is better than point B or not. ये comparison नहीं हो सकता. Isn't it? Right? So I don't have any way to compare the magnitude कि A का utility कितने से बढ़ा, B का utility कितने से कम हुआ, and ultimately which point is better, right? So from the point of view of society, socially, I cannot do that. Because of this limitation, there is something which is called as Hicks Kaldor compensation principle. So then we had Hicks Kaldor compensation principle. दोनों ने अपना अपना दिया है. I will talk about Hicks also and Kaldor also. Before we talk about Hicks and Kaldor, please understand that they have built themselves on the concept of Pareto only. माने उन्होंने start इसी से किया that utility is ordinal. But what they have beautifully done is that now they are doing both inter and intra comparison. So when I compare points, जब भी मैं points को compare करूंगी, I can go ahead and I can compare two Pareto efficient points also. अब दो Pareto efficient points को भी हम compare कर सकते हैं, right? So please write down with me जो भी अभी हमने story बोला है. Let's write that down. Then I will explain this. So please write down. As we move along the contract curve, we don't know whether the total welfare increases or decreases, right? So we don't know about the total welfare of the individual, and this acts as a limitation of Pareto criteria, right? This can be overcome by restoring Hicks Kaldor compensation principle. So we can restore these limitations. जो भी ये limitations हैं, we can resort to the Hicks Kaldor compensation criteria. Now let me talk about Kaldor first. ठीक है, बहुत important है. Try to understand Kaldor. So Kaldor says, whenever you move from one point to another, पहले समझ लो, then I will write it down. Whenever you move from one point, point A, to another point, point B, in the process of doing so, there will be someone who would have gained. There would be someone who would have lost. किसी ने gain किया होगा, किसी ने lose किया होगा. If the gainer can compensate the one who is losing, जिसने भी gain किया है, अगर वो जिसने lose किया है उसको compensate करते and still be better off, then the new point is better off. Mane, what does this mean? Let's try to take it through an example. Suppose at point A, individual A, I will just give you an example in terms of rupees first. He didn't use rupees. I'm just creating an example to make you explain the concept. Individual A has 50 rupees and individual B has 20 rupees. Now they move to another point where individual A has 80 rupees and individual B has 5 rupees. Okay. You can also do this in terms of utility. Rupees में नहीं करना तो utility में कर लो. Concept is the same. You can also write utils here, utils here, utils here, utils here. ऐसा कुछ कर सकते हो. तो अभी के लिए as of now, अगर मैं Pareto criteria use करूं, if I use the Pareto criteria, I cannot compare point A and B. Why? Because utility of individual A is increasing. देखो, it is increasing from 50 to 80. But utility of individual B is decreasing. So as of now, these points are not comparable. ये points comparable नहीं है, right? But what Kaldor suggested is that, okay, let us look at point B and let us look at this person who has gained. Individual A has gained now. Now what we can do is, suppose individual A gives some amount to individual B. Individual A ने individual B को compensate किया. He compensates individual B. And after compensating, the net utility of individual A is 60 utils. He compensated individual B. उसने individual B को कुछ दे दिया और देने के बाद भी whatever he is left up with, he gets a utility of 60 utils. And after he compensated individual B, जब उसने individual B को कुछ दिया, individual B's utility increased to 30 utils. it means that there was a rearrangement possible. अगर मैं B में जो भी इनके पास amount आया, they could rearrange themselves. The gainer compensated the loser. Gainer ने जो भी जिसको भी loss हो रहा था, whoever was losing उसको compensate किया, and still he could gain as compared to his original situation. देखो, here he was at 50, now he's at 60. Here he was at 20, here he's at 30. The loser is getting compensated. And even after compensation, the gainer still is at a better position. So this rearrangement has made both better off. दोनों ही better off हो गए हैं. And if this rearrangement makes both better off, how did this rearrangement came? It came from point B. B को ही तो हमने rearrange किया है. We rearranged point B, right? So it means that B must be better point than A. B must have more society welfare than A. This is what Kaldor did. So Kaldor did what Kaldor said कि ऐसा नहीं है कि point A and B compare नहीं हो सकता. You can compare point A and B. When you move from point A to B, individual A is the one who is gaining. Individual B is the one who is losing. If A can compensate B and still be better off than its initial position, then that point is better, right? इसी को बोल देते हैं हम Kaldor criteria, right? This is what is called as the Kaldor criteria. I hope this is clear. Hicks is also doing very similar thing only, but Hicks ka I will rewrite the statement, but first let's write for Kaldor. So please write down. Kaldor was the first person to derive a compensation principle. Right? Which states change in improvement of those who gain at a higher amount than those who lose can lead to better outcomes. Okay. In general words, if gainers can compensate losers and still be better off than before, then social welfare of society increases. Right? So we can compare the welfare of the society and we can compare 2 points, A and B, which are Pareto efficient. How we can compare two Pareto efficient points? If I go from one Pareto efficient point to another, right? And I can go ahead and I can say that to increase the utility of one individual, जो gain हुआ है, it is more than the loss. The gainer is compensating the loser. And still he is left up with some net gain. अभी भी कुछ gain बच गया उसके पास, दूसरे को उसके loss के लिए compensate करके, right? Then that is the compensation principle. This is used very, very highly in your, political economics. Why? Because in policy making, this is what we see. when we put money in a particular policy, suppose I am putting my money in education, तो वो पैसा जो education पे जा रहा है, it could have been used for some other purpose also. So there is someone who is gaining and there are some people who are losing. If the benefits of education are more than the loss that I have by not putting the money at some other place, then the net welfare of the society increases, right? This is how we compare policies, right? If the benefit outweighs the loss from any policy, we will go ahead with that policy. Now, what happened is that Hicks went ahead and he said exactly the same thing, but Hicks ने इसको थोड़े से concept को change करके उसने in terms of loser इस पूरा चीज को explain किया, right? So Kaldor explained in terms of gain कि अगर gainer compensate कर पाए loser को और फिर भी benefit में रहे तो the policy is a good one. But Hicks said the reverse. He said if the losers cannot bribe the gainer enough to not move away from that point, then it is a good point. Money, for example, this is again individual A and individual B. Utility 50 utils, 20 utils. ये एक point हो गया. Another point. Individual A, individual B. है ना? Here, your utility is 80 utils, 5 utils. Now, what is Hicks saying? Hicks said, I understand individual B has lost. And B likes this point more. B को लग रहा है कि ये वाला point better है, इस पे रहना चाहिए, इस पे नहीं आना चाहिए. B wants to stay at this point. Can B bribe individual A? ठीक है? Can B bribe individual A enough so that individual A doesn't want to come to this point? When will individual A not want to shift to this point? If B can give him so much bribery that his utility is above 80, अगर मैं इतना ब्राइब कर दूं कि सपोज आपकी ए की यूटिलिटी यहीं बैठे बैठे 82 हो जाए, तो ए यहां पे नहीं आना चाहेगा. पर उतना ब्राइबरी देने के लिए, टू गिव यू अ ब्राइबरी टू इंक्रीज योर यूटिलिटी सो मच, आई हैव टू डिक्रीज माई यूटिलिटी, तभी तो आपका बढ़ पाएगा. आई नीड टू गिव यू सम अमाउंट एंड आई विल बी विलिंग टू गिव यू हाउ मच अमाउंट such that my utility does not fall below 5, क्योंकि दूसरे पॉइंट पे तो मुझे 5 मिल ही रहा है. So when I am willing to give you bribery, how much maximum bribery I can give you? I can give you bribery as long as my utility is still going to exceed this 5. Suppose मैंने आपको bribery दिया and देने के बाद भी my utility is 8 utils and your utility increases to 82, right? My utility is 8 utils, your utility increases to 82. So do you want to go to this point now? No. Then this point is better off. So when we talk about Kaldor, Kaldor basically goes ahead and talks in terms of compensation. कि gainer will compensate loser. And then we compare the bundle. But when we talk about Hicks, Hicks uses the concept of bribery, right? Hicks basically goes ahead and Hicks says, if the loser is able to compensate, bribe the gainer, कि please उस point पे मत जाओ, please ये मत करो, मेरे से कुछ पैसा ले लो, है ना? And still he has enough left for him, then that point will be better off. So ultimately both point, अगर हम दोनों का ही बात करें, both of them are very similar, right? You can go with either way, right? Both of them talk about the same thing. One is doing it directly, one is doing it indirectly. when I will be showing you the graph also, right, you will realize that ultimately I am talking about the same thing